And all of a sudden, it was like an explosion, like a bomb went off as the lightning struck the ladder and splintered. And the lightning was slow motion for me. So I'm watching this bolt of lightning come right to me, and it's moving as fast as molasses. But it's the most beautiful light you have ever seen, ever. So my hands are cupped, and I'm cupping now lightning that's running up both of my arms. And when it gets to about my elbow on both arms, I'm encompassed in it. And then it went out my feet, and I know it went out my feet because my feet were black from the burns. My housemate actually dropped me off in front of the emergency room. So I was in the ICU for about 5 days, and I was in critical care burn unit for another 5 days. Before I woke up, wherever I was, when my heart stopped, was the most beautiful place I have ever imagined, and I have a good imagination.
Well, hello, Maren Muter. Welcome to the show. I'm truly honored you're joining me today and looking forward to our conversation. How are you feeling today?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me.
Well, I am so happy that you're here. We have such a great story to share. And every week we bring you powerful stories about life after death, awakening, and what it means to be human. And if that resonates, you'll love what's coming, because today I'm joined by Maren Muter, a lifelong student of consciousness who, after being struck by lightning, had a profound near-death experience that reframed everything, where consciousness resides and what the veil really is, and why love may be the only thing that truly carries through. Now, Maren's story is unique because this didn't begin with the lightning strike. As a child, she wrote letters to a being she called the Flower Lady on the other side of the veil, then buried those letters for years, but then later unearthing them and turning them into a book. So in this conversation, we'll go from the shock of the day to the ethereal harmony she describes to her ideas around parallel lives, deja vu, synchronicity, and what she believes a life review may actually include. So Maren, thank you for being here. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. What an introduction. Wow.
I definitely like getting that audience all warmed up and ready, but there's just so much more to it that we couldn't even include in there. So I know we're going to jump into the NDE and share that experience. First, I know you got hit by lightning, and I hope, physically everything's all put back together, as it were.
Yeah, I'm still working on that.
Yeah, that's what I'd hear. Yes, exactly. So, and then after that, I thought we could really go into the mediumship and just your whole life. You've been sort of deep into all of this, and there's so much to share. So if you like, I can hand the microphone and the stage over to you for the NDE.
Sure. Well, the NDE started on July 3rd this last year, 2025. So 6 months ago. I'll share something previous to that I don't know if I've shared before, aside from people in my small group that I speak to. About 3:33 in the morning, that morning, my Ring doorbell started going off in my backyard, and I looked at it, and I have two halos kind of floating around, and they're not moving, they're not bugs, there's something different, but you can also hear a conversation behind the scenes. So it was like this mechanical conversation going on. And I don't know if that has anything to do with the lightning strike or not, or if it was my son saying, "Hey, I'm excited to see you," because my son has passed away and my mother had passed away. And I'm looking at my Ring doorbell. I'm like, gosh, and it was going on for an hour by this time, just watching it. And so I go outside onto the balcony and I look down to the exact spot where this should be taking place, and there's nothing there. And I go back to my room and I go to sleep. And then in the morning, I look it up, and it's now daylight. So it's about 5:30 in the morning, and they're still there. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going down there. I'm going to walk around to see if there's anything like able to reflect off of the camera or what's going off. But by the time I got down there, my Ring doorbell cleared up, nothing's going on, and that's it. So I got a little ladder out and I decided I'd go paint the courtyard, which happens to be in front of the kitchen. It's a beautiful day, no clouds in the sky, and I'm painting the courtyard, and I put that away, and my kids are coming in that evening. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go in and start making some stuff in the kitchen. And as I'm cleaning that up, I'm in front of the sink, and in front of me about 10 feet is the little aluminum ladder I was using. And the sky becomes overcast. And my hands aren't in the water, but they're in front of the water. The window is open in front of me, and all of a sudden, it was like an explosion. Probably it sounded like a bomb went off as the lightning struck the ladder and splintered. And the lightning was slow motion for me. So I'm watching this bolt of lightning come right to me, and it's moving as fast as molasses. But it's the most beautiful light you have ever seen, ever. And I watch it so my hands are cupped, not in the water, and I'm cupping now lightning that's running up both of my arms. And when it gets to about my elbow on both arms, I'm encompassed in it. But I believe that it met right here in my throat, because this is where my internal burns were from my throat down. And then it went out my feet, and I know it went out my feet because my feet were black from the burns. So there's two things that happen at this time. One, I'm thrown off my feet and I'm inside this ethereal light, but I have a certain recollection myself, and I have somebody I share this house with who was visiting, and I got information from them and then information from my children. On a side note, if I stutter or if I'm taking time, it's because the nerves in my body are still healing, and so I have a disconnect between my thoughts and what comes out my mouth. So sorry if I pause a lot or if I have to figure out how to say a word. What I remember from seeing outside of my body, so you would say this is an out-of-body experience, but you really don't feel like I'm outside of my body. It just feels as natural as being inside your body as outside your body. I got up and I went all the way to the very top of the house where my housemate is, and I said, I was struck by lightning. It feels like I've swallowed acid. My tongue is heavy and it hurts. And the person didn't believe me, so I went downstairs and I called my son. I said, did you pick up your brother? He says, yep, we're on our way. I said, oh, good. I was struck by lightning. It feels like I've swallowed acid. My tongue is heavy and it hurts. And my body only wanted to go lay down on the ground. So I'm outside and it just wants to lay down on the ground. Anyway, somehow I get from there to the hospital. And my housemate actually dropped me off in front of the emergency room, and I go into the emergency room again and I say, I was struck by lightning. It feels like I've swallowed acid. My tongue is heavy and it hurts. And they pushed me right back into an ER room. And that's when I coded. So I was intubated. My entire throat was swelling up due to the burn. And they couldn't life-flight me because of the storm. So they did an emergency critical care transport into Boston. And when I got into Boston, I coded and I had a stroke code. So it was a mess. So I was in the ICU for about 5 days, and I was in critical care burn unit for another 5 days. I had something that's called cura uno paralysis, which is specific to lightning strike, which basically wipes your memory and it wipes out any use of your limbs. So I was basically a quadriplegic. The interesting thing about this paralysis is when the electrical system in your body kind of turns on, so does the movement and ability to use your arms. So my arms turned on before my legs. That was the next day, I guess. But it did take about 7 days for my legs to turn back on. And when they did, it was like nothing happened. I could get up and walk. When I was out, so there's several codes, and I am saying, because I don't remember coming back in between the codes. I was just wherever I was and woke up in a very foreign land in Boston. But before I woke up, wherever I was, when my heart stopped, it was the most beautiful place I have ever imagined. And I have a good imagination. But it is the epitome of harmony. It is absolutely everything, so much of everything that equates to nothing. It's everything in such a resonance that this resonance, this harmony becomes nothing, the absence of. So you kind of have this yin and yang. So you're surrounded by whatever information you want, whatever knowledge you want, whoever you want to speak to, it's all there. And at the same time, it's just black, but it's also not black. It's also white. It's ethereal black and ethereal white light. It's amazing. One of the interesting things that happened, though, when I was in the ICU and my son was sitting next to me, both of my sons, I could hear the prayers that they were saying, and I could feel the desperation they were feeling, but not as we imagine that here on earth. It was as if the veiling system was reversed to me. So as we are here on earth, we are veiled out, and so we don't get to see the ethereal realm because that's outside the third dimension. But the interesting thing is that ethereal realm houses the third dimension. So I have a reversed veiling system so I can see everything. And as prayers and pleading come up, it's almost like they hit this veil, your veil, my veil current. And all of those barters, all of those pleads dissipate. They kind of just fall back into the atmosphere of the third dimension. But what comes through is where that is derived from, which is love. And that hug and that desire and that love is what I received. And the whole time I want to say, it's going to be okay. Gosh, I'm okay. I can hear you. I'm right here. There's no distance. I'm not anywhere else. I'm right here. There's no distance between us. But of course, that doesn't come down audibly like that. So I think that was the most profound spot that I was in, knowing that everything is going to be okay. We don't really need to worry about anything, and we don't need to worry about where our loved ones are and, are they okay? Because they are. And they are loved and they're whole, total, and complete. And their life is a beautiful harmony. And they're still with you. They can still feel you. They can still laugh with you, and they can still cry with you. It's just different because we don't have a body in the ethereal realm. So the translation, my earthbound translation that I'm telling you now, isn't really what it looks like there, but I don't have any words that I can describe that with.
Wow, that's amazing. So it sounds like you're saying the loved ones in the physical 3D space are sending prayers and almost, desperate pleads for your full and immediate recovery. And yet it sounds like you're saying the words fall away, but the love goes through, and that's what you feel.
Yeah. It's like the vibration. You can feel the energy or the essence of what those prayers are. And so they're wonderful. But they're not making a difference. They're not determining if I am going to have a near-death experience or not. It's just sharing love. And that love derives from, an intimate connection that is potentially going to be lost, and that's a scary thing. But the love that comes through into the ethereal space is much larger. It's almost like one of those hugs. Have you ever loved someone so much that you just want to hug them and you can't get close enough? Like if you're holding your child or someone you really love and you just wish that you could make that hug even tighter. Well, in the ethereal space, you're like inside that most amazing hug.
Now, can you describe even more the physical nature of yourself before you got hit by lightning? You got hit by lightning, you coded, you went to Boston, you coded again, you're in critical care, and you're gone, okay? So you're on the other side observing this. So how would you define the folks on this side are in physical 3D form, you on the other side are effectively what at that point? And then I know I've seen you talk before about how consciousness is actually connected into possibly thousands of multiple 3D lives that are happening to experience them all, right? So during your NDE, where were you? Were you just consciousness then, or were you in between this physical form and consciousness?
Your consciousness and soul isn't housed within this body. This body is an observational vessel only. Consciousness, in order for us to have this body, our consciousness needs to observe from outside of the third dimensional realm, or this body wouldn't, the waveform of this body wouldn't collapse into something that we could see materially. So when my body ceases, or when your body ceases, your consciousness is basically not using or utilizing the tool that is our body anymore. So we don't go anywhere. We're not going to a new location. The only thing that we're doing is we're stopping attention on this particular body. That's it. It's just like if you were holding a microscope in 7th grade science class and you're looking at a petri dish and observing that petri dish and the cells on that petri dish. This body is kind of like that microscope observing the third dimensional realm. And when the body is done, I put the microscope down, but I haven't changed. I haven't gone anywhere. I haven't done anything except put that down. So in the third dimensional realm, there is no body. There's no physical body. It is mostly energy and wavelength. And for me, when I was there, it was like music, harmony. And part of that music has stayed with me here. So I hear it. I don't play the piano, but I've gone onto the piano. I've never played the piano. And it's amazing because all of a sudden, all the keys make sense to me now. And I can play snippets of what I think I was hearing there, which was amazing.
Well, when you talk about the notion of looking through the microscope, and you look down and you see thousands of little, cells moving around down there. You are the consciousness. You get to observe them all. And so you get that benefit. And that's what it's all about. But if you're one of those little cells that's wiggling around like you are and like I am, I'm not aware really of what consciousness is up to myself, but I'm not aware of what all the other thousands of little cells are doing. All I'm aware of is just myself, this one little cell and 1,000 of them that's wiggling. But all of a sudden, when my self ceases to exist, the experience that I'm having, consciousness can no longer have because it has ended. So then where does I have awareness of the single cell right now. When that single cell ceases to operate, do I go back into the full awareness of the consciousness watching all 1,000 cells?
Yeah, so you definitely go back into the full consciousness. So your life is going to be whole, total, and complete. And we're going to pretend that the full consciousness is a symphony. And your life here, as we are making this life, is conducting its own little symphony in itself. When your body ceases, that symphony condenses into a single music note. It's whole, total, and complete. And that goes up into basically the overarching symphony. Now, our consciousness, the portion of our consciousness that is observing this life, and we're pretending that petri dish is there, and all of those cells, we're going to say that all of those cells are not individual cells, okay? It's not observing my life and your life. This particular microscope is for my life only. And my life began and ended at inception. So there's no difference between life and death. It is one and the same. You can't have life without death, and you can't have death without life. It has to show up together, and that's it. But what happens is if we look at what I call a harmonic principle of least action, it takes the idea of a principle of least action, which is a quantum idea where a particle basically takes the least overall cost, the shortest distance, and to a space. In order for life and death to be one and the same, there has to be a weaving of those two things. And what's happening is our consciousness, when it created this body, is observing all potentials that this particular body can go through. So every single potential is a different path. Every single potential for me has its own endpoint, and all of that comes together in the end. So if we were to look at it as if I took what I call a harmonic least action principle, every life is the simultaneous execution of all experiential trajectories, so every trajectory available to a singular body particle. And this is resolved through harmonic configuration, or basically karma playing out in real time. And this is what binds life and death as a singular event. So if we were to think of what some people talk about karma, we live one life and we have certain actions, and then we come back and we either play out or learn things that we didn't learn before. Well, we wouldn't actually be able to learn anything, and we wouldn't actually be able to observe or have a karma for a previous life, if that is what we believe. Because there is something called the no cloning theorem. One life can never be duplicated, even if you are cloned, even whatever it is, you can never duplicate a life, which means that I can never again have the same vantage point that I have here. And you can never have the same vantage point you have with your life. So I can't step into Brad, or I can't step into a future life, even if a future life was called Maren, and learn lessons that I didn't learn here. So all of that karma has to play out simultaneously. I have to have the karma in order to create that balance. I have to have that karma in order to create harmony, in order to be whole. If I'm not whole, I don't exist. If I don't have, it's just like, if I take this piece of paper, if this piece of paper doesn't have a top and a bottom, it doesn't exist. Even if I try to slice off the bottom, it still has a bottom. But it can't just only have a top. And my life can't only have a beginning separate from the ending. It has to be one and the same. And what's binding this paper together, what's binding our life together, is the potential that this life can experience, and we are that weave. And that's what our consciousness is observing.
Well, it sort of feels like when you talk about a beginning and an ending defined instantly, that's because we live in this world of linear time. Okay, so there's a beginning, a linear time, and an end. But maybe on the other side, if they say there's no time, you create the whole thing instantly. So the beginning, the middle, and the end is all created instantly, and then you're dropped in to experience it. So are you saying that there is a consciousness of yours that creates 1,000 Marens, boom, and they all have different experiences, one turns left, one turns right?
There's only one Maren. There will only ever be one Maren. But the neat thing is a particle can be in multiple places simultaneously, the exact same particle. And I always get this, but Maren, I'm not a particle. Look at the size of me. If I just sent you to the moon, could you see me? No. If I sent you to the far reaches of the universe, do I even exist? I am so small. I'm so infinitely small that my body behaves and is a particle. So that means my body can be in multiple places simultaneously, totally different places. Our veiling system is so magnificent, and the only place that our veiling system lives is in our brain. And it is so magnificent that not only can it veil the ethereal space, but it can veil each potential that it is experiencing. So every single potential thinks it is just as real and tangible and is the only one that this body is experiencing. But this is the only body observing all of the potentials that it could have. So the next time you make a decision, you're going to go left or right. You're going to be in both places, this exact body.
Yeah, I guess when I said 1,000 Marens, I kind of meant there's one Maren, but like you said,
Yep.
the particle, can exist in 1,000 different places at the same time. Well, if that's true, you
Yep.
could kind of go, there's 1,000 Marens, but there's only one Maren, but it's a particle and it's in 1,000 different places simultaneously, but it's one. Okay. Yeah.
Sort of.
So,
Okay.
no, but it's a good distinction. So thank you for that, for clearing that
Yeah,
up.
and it's not on a multiverse. So it's all playing out right here. There's not a parallel universe. There's not a parallel something. In order for me to experience this, it's here in this exact same space.
Okay. And I've heard you say before, listen, I have a job offer. Okay. A, I take it. B, I don't take it. Okay. That's an example probably of one Maren. A particle that could be in two places at one time. One particle went and took the job, the other particle did not. And they're not in multiple dimensions or universes. They're all in the same one. How do they coexist in the same one, and yet they're separate experiences?
Because everything is a wave, right? And only until observation does it collapse. So our consciousness is outside of the third dimensional realm watching this. And because our consciousness is amazing, has amazing abilities, it can watch every potential. And as it's watching every potential, it collapses each potential. Imagine it kind of like this. I want you just to imagine that you have a job offer right now. And I want you to imagine what it's like to play out that job offer and imagine what it's like not to play out that job offer. So you kind of, in a way, are imagining yourself doing both, right? Did you go anywhere to imagine that? You're right exactly where you are. So that's kind of like what's happening with our consciousness. What we're doing is we're playing out the imagination of our consciousness. Our body, in reality, isn't solid. It is a hologram. We can take a high-power microscope right now and look through, and we'll notice that our hand is filled with millions of buzzing around atoms and smaller material, but it's not solid. There's nothing solid about us. It's all borrowed material that's just buzzing around. We are a living hologram. So imagine your consciousness is just imagining all of these things playing out.
Oh yeah, no, I get it. But that's a very common thing. If a person has a job offer, they should potentially imagine what it would be like to take the job offer. All the pluses and all the minuses, pros and cons. Oh, but what if I don't take it? What are the pros and cons there? All right, now the difference there is that I myself in my observation have evaluated both. And so I have both stories and consequences in my space that I'm evaluating. But then eventually I have to take one. So if I take the job here, there's another particle of me that's not taking the job over there. Now in that space, as I take the job, I don't know what the experience is like not taking the job.
Not a particle that took the job and a particle that didn't take the job. You took it, you didn't take it. It's just like the top and bottom of the piece of paper. You did both. So you didn't split, you just observed both potentials. The thing about making a decision is even if we play out every scenario that we think, okay, this is going to be really good, it might give me more money, it might do that. You might take that job offer, but the second you take that job offer, you don't get to control anything that happens from that point. You can take that job offer and you're like, all right, I got my job, and step outside and get hit by a truck. You could take that job offer and be super excited about it and show up to the World Trade Center on September 11th.
Well, that's true. And that comes back to the notion of free will.
Free will happened at the moment of inception, when your consciousness says, I wonder what? I wonder how this combination of these two lives, these two particles, the mother and father particle, at this precise moment will react, respond, and behave in a myriad of situations. That was the free will moment. After that free will moment, we have this beautiful chaos that takes form. It turns into this kind of a nebula of every possibility, and it's just stunning. So it plays out both sides of every situation, both sides of every scenario, and takes that all into consideration. And once it does that, this nebula that's kind of forming around harmonizes and becomes complete and whole.
So that would look like kind of a root system. You know, you kind of started from the root, and then you would branch off into all the possible little branches of roots that have gone down. You know, like the branches of a tree go up, but the branches of a root go down. So either way, up or down, there's a perception that maybe I'm having right now of only one choice along all those different sort of choices.
Correct.
And that's mine and all the way down through. So are you saying that it's almost this infinite number of A and B, you know, this way and that way, it's all the way down through. And eventually it'll get to the bottom, and then all those lives, you know, those experiences end, and consciousness says, wow, that was fun, right? And yet I, for some reason at the moment, am only containing the perception of one of those decisions all the way down through to the bottom, even though there's possibly thousands or millions of them.
Correct. So that's where your veiling system comes in. That's where this veil comes into play. Your brain has the ability to veil off every single one of those potentials. So our brain right now, in real time, as you and I are speaking, is veiling off different scenarios of what's happening right now. So in between each one of those veils, so let's say it's a horse and it has like the blinders on, that's basically what it's doing in between every single potential, every single possibility. So each possibility believes that it is the only one, and we're going down this straight line. That's important because that allows us to absorb everything that's happening on that particular trajectory, to immerse ourselves into that particular trajectory. And it would be immersing itself into every single one, because that's how we get to have this wonderful experience. But it does feel very linear, and it feels linear because we're here in the third dimension, and every single trajectory feels like it has a beginning and an end, and that's it. And we're just choosing choices, and it's looking like, you know, a chart of up and down, up and down, up and down of our choices until our death. But again, we have to know what the opposite side of those choices are in order for us to even understand in the end the depth of that decision that we made.
As I make it all the way down to the bottom of the tree, and the choice that I'm conscious or aware of, at the bottom of the tree, when all of the particles of me that are, there's only one me, those particles, they all end all at the same time, and they go back up into consciousness, and I go, oh, wow, I only knew this one tiny thread, but there's the other million that happened, and it's like, holy cow, you know, it's like all these different experiences that I had that I was not tuned in on. I've heard you say before, it's like the veil of forgetfulness isn't really a veil of forgetfulness. It's more like a TV, you know, 1,000 channels are being broadcast all at the same time, and you're tuning into one of them. And so you're not forgetting 999 channels. You're actually just tuning into one of them. And sometimes your tuner gets off and you tune into something and, oh, that's not me. Or, you know, I thought it was, or maybe that feels like a past life, but it's just another one of whatever. Anyway, so as you're tuned into all those things, there you go. So you go back to consciousness, and then you go, oh, there's the million other experiences that happened. The ones where, like you said before, died in utero, or died at 106 years old, or anywhere in between, and made all these crazy choices, and boom, you know, you feel all of that. Okay, so I'm at that point now. I'm consciousness, and all these things came flushing back. And now, can I say, I want to do this again?
Well, your consciousness does do it again, right? But not as Maren Muter.
Exactly. So now my consciousness finishes up with the Brad, and it's like, whoa, a million different Brad experiences. That was how. So because I could, as consciousness, do it again as another whatever, that means prior to that, I would have also done it 1,000 times before. But there is no time.
But now you're thinking linearly. Now you're thinking
I'm unfortunately trained that way.
No, exactly. So everything that happened previous and everything that happens post is the same, because there's no time space in the ethereal space. So that it's not like it's saying, okay, now I really want to go back. You and I are speaking that way because that's how we understand each other. But there, it's not like, okay, I want to go back. If we think about everything on this planet or everything in the universe that we can observe in the third dimensional realm, even the teeniest, tiniest little quarks, all the way to the most massive thing that we can imagine, every single one of those is an observational point for consciousness. Every single one. Every molecule in our body is an observation point for consciousness. Every tree, every blade of grass, every water droplet is a conscious observation point. And it's all playing out. The thing about our consciousness wanting to come back down here. So, okay, Maren was a lot of fun, or Brad was a lot of fun. Let's go do it again. It works more off of curiosity, I would say. And just because it decides somehow that it's going to come back and observe again, or it is observing at the same time, all of these things, it doesn't mean it is another life. It's not creating past life experiences. Okay? Because there is no time on the ethereal side, that means that the observation in the 1800s is happening at the observation of the 2026s. At the same moment. So there's no jump in time for our consciousness to follow through with.
Yeah, I kind of get that. And I often think of that as kind of when you used to go to the movie theaters long ago, they had the reel of film, that was up there in the projector room. And the movie's done, it's all up there. It's all those little frames that are going to go, past the little light. And it's going to give us a linear time sequence and show us the movie from beginning to end. No, the movie's done. The ending is done. It's not going to change, right? And so all these different experiences that are happening in consciousness is just a bunch of reels lying around. It's all done. You can just say, I'm going to dive into this reel, and experience that one. Mm-hmm. But if I am going back up to my consciousness, I could say, well, that Brad thing was really fun, but now, you know what? I'm going to go to like a water planet and be a dolphin. So let's go do that. And I know it's not linear. It's all happening at the same time. Yeah. And I would wonder if, while I'm being the dolphin, if any of the Brad experiences would be reflected through consciousness that would help the dolphin experience or influence it in any way, or are they totally separate?
They're separate, completely separate. So you have to remember your consciousness, when Brad was done, doesn't say, I want to go see the dolphin. When consciousness, and we're just playing this all hypothetically, just so everybody knows. When consciousness says, I wonder what happens if, if I bring these two things together and I create a Brad molecule. At the same time, consciousness is saying, okay, I wonder, or a different consciousness or a different symphony or whatever is saying, I want to know what it's like to be a dolphin on a water planet. So the dolphin on the water planet and Brad Peterson are happening right now. Just like if you're outside walking around, let's say you're in New York City and you're walking down the pavement on a sidewalk somewhere, at that moment for you in 2026 here on Earthbound Times, it is a pavement. It's a sidewalk. You're also walking right now exactly where another conscious entity, another particle, is walking in 1593 and its mud path. In that exact same moment where your exact same foot is, there's another life experiencing a totally different life right there.
Got it. It goes back to the film reel again. The 1593 whatever film is done already, and the 2026 film is done already, and they were shot in the same location, and they're happening all at the same time. So it kind of reflected that way. All right. So while this is going on right now, all the little decisions that were made in my world are going down my decision tree. All the decisions in your world are going down your decision tree. And then at some moment, we decided to connect. And so our decision trees came together, and our consciousness is up there looking at us together now going, hey, look at that, you know? And then we will then go our own separate ways and off with our whatevers. When we're all done with our particular, and we roll this back up into consciousness, is that two separate consciousnesses that are up there? The one that had your existence and everything else that happens eternally, and the one that has my existence? And then how many consciousness are there? And then is there a super consciousness that connects it all at some point?
So that's why I use the analogy of a symphony, and our life as a music note. So it's basically a memory, a music note memory, and it houses this a whole life. It houses that whole tree, all the little branches and all the little root systems into one for Maren. And Maren is its own music note with all of that information harmonizing so beautifully that it almost becomes nothing. And everything of Maren Muter all the time. And that music note goes up into the symphony. And we're going to say that symphony is the overarching consciousness or the overarching symphony. It is an imperative part of that symphony. In order for that symphony to play, it has to have the Maren Muter note, and it has to have the Brad Peterson note, and it has to have whomever else note, and it has to have the trees note and the waters note in order for this symphony to be as beautiful as it is. So when we die, and you hear a lot of near-death experiencers say it was just like going home, and I can't describe it, and it's overwhelming, it's because you touched home. You touched something so immense and so beautiful and so harmonized that it vibrated and resonated deeper than we can imagine. And the only way we can create that depth is by experiencing the totality of Maren, experiencing the totality of Brad. And so if we want to say, are we different consciousnesses? We are different conscious observation points, which can't be replicated. So yes, we are totally unique to our own. And yes, at the same time, we are part of this overarching symphony, which is one. And so your music note and my music note, everybody else's music note are playing their specific part of this symphony to make that symphony whole.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And somehow in your life, as you were going down your decision tree, choosing to go left or right, you chose to get on a ladder and go out in the backyard. And then something chose to hit you with lightning and somehow give you this NDE experience that allowed you to do what? Now that we've talked about this and defined this really well, we are having these experiences going on a decision tree, only being one, and yet there's thousands. Consciousness is the conductor, conducting the orchestra, right? And then it sounds like at some point, even though you were deciding to be the oboe player and you were playing that oboe, or I guess it's this way, right? Sorry, that's a flute.
That's okay.
You're the...
It's the oboe flute.
Yeah, the oboe flute. That's there's so many. There's 1,000 instruments. You got to make up a few, I guess, right? So now somehow the oboe flute was able to go up to the conductor and stand on the podium next to him and listen to the whole orchestra. Where beforehand, the oboe flute was stuck in a studio with a microphone playing their part and not knowing what all the other instruments were doing.
That's the interesting thing. So you're still thinking, and this is normal, earthbound up, and we need to think ethereal down. So my consciousness, the one that's talking to you right now, the piece that's allowing my body to be able to speak to you right now and to have all of these experiences, is seeing everything play out, is seeing both sides to my decisions. So the only thing is, for a moment, when I had that ladder right there, I'll guarantee I died and didn't come back, and I came back. My consciousness right now is observing the trajectory of life post-Maren and with Maren returning.
That would be the case for all NDEs then, I guess.
That's the case for every single NDE. A lot of people think, okay, I went up there and they gave me a choice. Do you want to go back or you don't want to go back? The truth is, they died and they came back. They did both. But our brain has to make sense of ethereal information. And it has a very hard time doing that because ethereal doesn't translate to third dimension. So our brain has to say, okay, this is a familiar concept. I was up there, or when we say up there, it's not really anywhere, but we do that. And it's saying, okay, how do I make sense of what happened? Because I died and I didn't die. I died and I'm still observing. How is that possible? And so our brain is saying, well, obviously we got a choice and we decided to come back down. It makes it easy for us to try to communicate what we were experiencing.
Very much so. Now, you know what we should do is go back before the NDE, because you've had these experiences or various other experiences your whole life. And on your website, you talk about mediumship as well. And when you were young, you'd been writing these letters that you sort of squirreled away and then now pulled them out and created a book. Why don't we kind of go back in time and talk about that and how that's influenced what you're doing now?
I have been writing about this subject my whole life. And I started writing when people started telling me to be quiet, stop talking about the little dots that are creating my hand. And I would say, my hands see through, my hands see through. And my sister would be like, Maren, you need to not say this stuff. And so I started writing to what I called the flower lady. And when I unearthed them, they were not only buried in the yard, but there were letters stuck in the rafters. When I unearthed them, I think there were 40 years in these rafters. And I only published ones that I thought were innocent, or, just people would look at it and go, okay, that's nice. Because I had been told my whole life, don't talk about the other things. So I'm going to be writing another book called Letters in the Attic, which go into the topics you and I like to explore much deeper. One of the things that I noticed as a child, and I really set out to kind of prove, was that I was not disconnected from the ethereal plane. In fact, that connection to the ethereal plane is what allows me to exist. And so when I speak about mediumship, I call it personal mediumship, because a lot of people have been told you need to talk to spirit guides, or you need to pray to somebody, or you need to go outside of your body in order to get a closer connection to a God or whatever you believe in. But the truth is, there is nobody closer to that God or whatever you believe in than you. There is a direct connection there, and that is your intuition, and that is your life force for this body. If you don't have that connection, if this body does not have that connection, this body has ceased. It cannot exist, it cannot function unless it has that connection. So the next time you think, why do I feel so disconnected? You have to remind yourself, am I breathing? Yes. Am I thinking? Yes. Am I able to see this world around me? Yes. Then your connection is viable, it's strong, and it exists, and you are not alone. And you don't have to go outside of that to prove it.
I love that. And I'd ask you to define 3 words that could kind of help maybe understand this even more,
Sure.
which is mind, thoughts, and brain. Okay. You know what I'm saying here, right? It's like people can maybe use those in the wrong way. Where do those exist? How are they functioning? How are they helping? How are they limiting?
We'll start with brain. Brain, we know where it is. It's housed within our skull. And the brain is the mechanical power horse of this body. It's kind of saying, okay, let's turn on these nerves. This is the stimulus we're getting, and it's making sense of our physical world. Our mind, we're going to say, kind of goes around our whole body and outside of our body, because we're an electromagnetic organism. So we do have a frequency, we do have a current of energy that isn't just only housed within this body, but it radiates off of our body. And we're going to say that our mind is part of this filtration system that our brain reads. And our mind, there's ethereal information floating around all over the place. We're inside the third dimension, or ethereal space inside the third dimension. And our mind has to say, okay, we need information in order for us to navigate this terrain that we're in, navigate our environment, navigate conversation, navigate everything. So it starts searching for information that's relevant to this body only, this life only. And it says, okay, is this information familiar? So does it matching up some of the things that we're experiencing here on Earth? And it says, yeah. And so as it comes down through the mind filtration system, it says, okay, is this information relevant? And the mind says, yes. And the more relevant it becomes, the more it pushes it down into the brain. Basically, I'm just making this for image. And the brain then can translate that into a communication style, into information that's relevant to this life. If for some reason the mind captured information that's not relevant to this life but familiar, and it misrepresents, and our brain starts catching on, the brain says, whoa, we don't want that anymore. It's not relevant to this life. Don't give us any more of that. And then that information is extracted and no longer accessible. Our thoughts are our brain trying, when we have a thought or when we're mulling over something, or like, okay, I've got this decision I got to make, or whatever it is, all that is doing is our brain is trying to make sense of information. And that's what our thoughts are doing. And it's earthbound. Thoughts are earthbound. They're not really ethereal. It's just our brain doing what it does. It's functioning, and it's trying to make sense of information and put pictures together in order for us to continue and proceed this life.
So the thoughts are the tricky part, because sometimes those help us and sometimes they don't. In fact, I would add one more dimension to that, not only sort of the brain and the mind, but in between there, it's like the thoughts and what we think and the emotions and what we feel. So how do you sort of characterize sort of thoughts and emotions? Are those injected into our experience to see how we respond to those? Are they created organically within us? Where do they come from?
They're created organically within us for the most part. Every earthbound emotion, feeling we have here is a survival mechanism. Even our love is survival mechanism, because love kind of tells us who we can trust. And sometimes we love people we can't trust, and we think love is broken, but it's not. When we have an emotion, it is our body's reaction to stimulus, and we have our body has a need to stay alive. It wants to stay alive. It wants to experience. It doesn't want to be poisoned. It doesn't want to be killed. It wants to stay alive. And so our emotions help us guide into safety. Our emotions help us guide ourselves into situations that are beneficial to us. So if we're angry, that emotion is basically saying, hey, I'm repelling this. I don't want to be there. Let's step away from it. But for some reason, many people think if I'm angry, I'm going to go tell that person I'm super mad at them, I hate them, and it's just creating more conflict. When really, your body is angry because it's saying that is not a good situation to be in. Let's get away from it. Love, when we have a nice love, let's say, mother and child love, or a father and child love, what that's doing is it's creating a bond of trust. The child is learning that trust equals love, and I can use that person for survival. And this is why it's imperative to, hold your child, your baby, when they're born, pick them up when they're crying, and teach them the rules of the world, because they are trusting you. And as that trust and that bond thickens, that's when love forms. And so when we meet somebody we want to marry, or we meet, friends that we love, it's because you have now put trust in that person, that person is a safe place for your survival, and vice versa. It might not sound as sexy as people imagine it to be, but it is the epitome of what life is. Life is about trust and survival. And when you have that, you feel like you can take on the world. When that trust is broken, when people get a broken heart, when someone has an affair or whatever it is, it's because that bond of trust, it wasn't the love necessarily. It's that bond of trust, that safety has been ripped away, and you're now feeling very exposed.
And I've heard you talk before about not hiding from those emotions. Obviously good emotions people are going to celebrate, but the tough ones, the difficult ones, it's like, don't bury the emotion and just try to put on a happy face. That probably won't serve you.
When we enter emotions, they're there for a purpose. So sadness shows up when there's a reason to be sad. And anger shows up when there's a reason to be angry. And love and happiness, they all show up when they're appropriate. Most of the time, you're just flat. Most of the time, people are just flat. They're not up, they're not down, they're just what they are, which is a great space to be, because that means that you are in usually a safe environment, or you're able to navigate a harder environment. So sometimes if you're in a really tough situation and you're feeling flat, that's a good space to be in, because you really can hear your intuition. You're really listening to your body. You want to be able to feel these emotions. You don't want to suppress your sadness or your anger, because it's telling you something. It's saying, hey, my body is not responding to this well. Please listen to me, and let's step back, or let's embrace this. You want to be able to cry. You want to be able to feel the sadness. You don't want to dwell in it, because that's not good, but you want to be able to feel it. So when your tears stop, get up and allow your tears to have stopped. But while you're crying, cry it out. Let them come. But know it is okay to go do something else besides hang on to that sadness. Like, oh my God, I cried all day, and keep reminding yourself you kept crying all day. Well, are you really then allowing yourself to be fully immersed in where you are now? It's not putting it off the table. It's not saying get over it, because when your emotions come through, they start building a new perspective of life. So you have a new understanding of the world around you. You have a new understanding of people you interact with. And that all derives from these very important emotions that we feel.
Yeah, and I think that new understanding, some people sort of refer to that as the lesson learned, gives you that wisdom as you go through the rest of your life in this linear form, to react and behave differently going forward in ways that better serve you, it would seem. So, wow, I think that's great wisdom. Thank you. Hey, I have this next section going forward I call Heart's First Whisper. So in this, I have some questions that I set up for you ahead of time, and I picked them all out for you for sure. And boy, you can just use your heart to reply. No thoughts or mind required. What do you think?
All right, let's go for it.
Well, the first one, if multiple life paths exist at once, as we've talked about, what helps you stay open, present, and compassionate in the one you're living now?
The understanding that there are other versions of the situation that I'm experiencing, and it's humbling to me.
Yeah, I've heard you talk about this before, and it is, and that's why I put this question together. I really wanted to stress this point, that if you're going through life and you make a choice and it's like, oh, I shouldn't have done that, it turns out bad, but you gain some lessons and learned and wisdom and so forth. The fact is, well, according to how you're sharing your experiences, that when you're all done with this physical incarnation, you go back to consciousness, and then you get to experience all the other choices that were possibly made. So you don't have to worry. Some of the choices you'll make here seem successful and some seem less than successful, but it doesn't matter. Sort of bring yourself into that entire experience in whole and have it, and then move on, because ultimately you're having all experiences anyway.
Exactly. And for me, that's humbling.
Yes, I love it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, number 2, what has grief taught you that you don't believe could have been learned any other way?
I've always been a very grateful person. I've carried gratitude within me. Like I was adopted at birth, but every night saying my little prayers, I would always tell God at the end of the prayer to please tell my mother thank you for having me. But when I lost my son, that just magnified 1,000 million times more that I was so lucky that I got to share 22 years of this particular trajectory with him. And I think that's what grief has just filled me with a ton of gratitude.
Gratitude for all the wonderful things that we do have in this particular experience.
And even the hard things. I'm thankful for even the really crappy hard things.
I think I've heard you mention before that there was another experience of you and he living your lives out together. And you even mentioned there would be an experience of him living where he loses you.
Correct.
All those will come together later. I think that is helpful for people to keep that in mind. Yeah, it's certainly the first time that I'd heard it from you, and I really like that. Thank you. Number 3, when anger or fear appears as a form of protection, what practical steps help you soften and reconnect?
It's such a natural point of where I am now that I go back to maybe my childhood when I would have anger or fear. Where is this coming from? And do I need this anger? Am I in danger? What's going on that's building an anger? And typically, as I start doing that, the anger subsides and it goes away. Or if there's fear, why am I scared? What is causing this fear? What is the basis of it? And then when I look at it that way, then it just kind of dissipates and I realize I either don't have anything to fear, I really don't have anything to be angry about. It allows me to then process the situation with a clear head rather than having knee-jerk reactions.
Very helpful. We have this survival instinct, which is a good thing, fear of falling, if you're on the edge of a cliff, you want to be very safe, don't accidentally fall over.
That's why the fear is there. It's saying, hey, and so if you look at it and you're like, well, why am I afraid? And then you look down and you say, okay, there's a huge cliff right here. Then you can be like, well, I guess I'm afraid because I'm too close to the edge of the cliff. What can I do? I can step back.
Exactly. And yet many times we're in sort of angst and fear over things that can't be changed or we really don't need to worry about as well. That isn't a cliff. It's something that's happened around the world and it's been blown out of proportion. It has nothing to do with my life and I'm worried about it. So, you got to sort of reflect on that and decide, maybe how that's affecting your health as well. So I think one of the other things is anger. If you're angry at someone, sometimes it kind of feels like maybe it's because I'm judging them. And maybe if I didn't judge them, I would see things more clearly and I wouldn't be angry. And, sometimes you can think of sort of unconditional love is where I don't judge. And, if you can approach a life like that, it might feel a little less angst throughout your life also. It's possible. Well, that brings us to number 4, which is, in your experience, what do people misunderstand most about synchronicity, its meaning, or the attention required to notice it?
Everything is synchronistic. So I think that we look at larger synchronicities that are kind of in your face, but everything is absolutely synchronistic. Even if you fall and trip, that was synchronicity. Even if nothing is happening, you enjoyed an afternoon reading a book, that was synchronicity. Everything that we have is synchronistic. So its meaning is you're alive.
And synchronistic, who's deciding what's supposed to be happening that's making it synergistic and synchronistic? When you were hit by lightning and had the NDE, what was it that decided that should happen?
In the book I wrote, Your Quantum Brain, I talk about a cream and tea nebula. So take a cup of tea in a glass jar or coffee in a glass you can see through. And pour your cream in and don't stir it, just watch how it naturally blends together. And at first it creates chaos, right? And eventually it will come to an equilibrium. when I was struck by lightning, it was part of that chaos of life. So when inception happened, it sent off all this chaos in order to find that equilibrium, which is death. So the totality of life, death. So when the lightning struck the ladder, it also didn't strike the ladder. It also struck the ladder and missed me. And it also maybe struck the ladder and hit my dog. I don't know. But so it's not like one event happened. So there was no synchronicity about that. There was nobody planning it. It's just like having that cup of coffee in a clear glass and you pour your cream in and watch it. That's the only thing that's happening. So I was struck and I wasn't struck.
Because you're only aware of one of the possible outcomes. You think it's synchronistic, and you could probably call it that. But the fact is every possible outcome actually took place. And so,
Correct.
Ultimately later on, you'll go get to experience all those as we talked about before. So that is really, really interesting. So the fact is, another lightning bolt hit you and you died, entirely.
Well, it was the same lightning bolt, but yeah.
Yeah, this is, for me, so impactful for today. I just love the notion of the fact that everything is taking place. You're just observing one of them, so don't worry about it. You'll get caught up later on the rest of it. So that brings us to number 5. If you could leave listeners with one gentle instruction for living well while we're here in this particular experience, what would it be?
Turn off the noise. Get rid of all the shoulds, how you should be, how you should behave, how you should look, all the shoulds. And listen to your intuition, because truly you are enough, just as you are. Just you were designed by intention. You were chosen to be this amazing microscope for consciousness to look through, and you're the only one that is you. That's it. That's how special you are. There's only one you. There's only ever going to be one you. And don't let anybody tell you what you should do with that.
I always knew the S word was a bad word, should, for sure. But the S word is also a good word, special. I heard you say that too. So the special is a good S word. The should is definitely a bad one. Do not use the should word. Everything is just happening as it is, for sure.
Should adds a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety to your life. It sure does.
It sure does. I should never say should again. Whoops.
I use should all the time, but I'm like, should. No.
Well, Maren, you know what? Thank you for sharing this, especially the parts that don't fit neatly into language. Your story holds both awe and practicality, the shock of the lightning, the beauty of the harmony, and the reminder that when everything else fails away, love still communicates. I love that. And I know folks have not gotten enough and they're going to want to reach out to you. So where can they reach out to you and what can they find?
Well, they can go to my website, marenmuter.com, and there they can find, I do monthly fireside chats, so you're welcome to come. It doesn't cost anything. You can come, ask any questions you want. There's no question off the table. I have writers' workshops. I have Monday morning check-ins. What else do? We do a lot of stuff over there, and it's no cost to you. You can taste chocolate. I make chocolate by hand, so you can do that. You can find my books.
MarenMuter.com. That link, by the way, is in the description. If you go down and hit more and go to the description, click that. That'll take you right over there. And so all those services that you talked about, plus the chocolate. I might have to stop at the chocolate section first. I just want to warn you. I'm a chocolate crazy person, but I love like 100% cacao. You can go to Sprouts out here in California, and they make the bars, 65%, 70, 85%. And then there's a 100% cacao bar called Total Blackout. And a lot of people don't like that, but I do.
Well, if you want some, I have blackout nibs, which I just make as drops so you can suck on them. So I'll send you some.
I will definitely place my order after this for sure. So MarenMuter.com, I am coming for sure. Thank you for today. It has been a pleasure of mine. What a great conversation. Thanks so much, Maren.
Thank you, Brad.
Hey, to our viewers, if Maren's story moved you, be sure to like, subscribe, and share, and let us know in the comments. I reply to every one of those comments. I love the conversation. And if this episode spoke to your heart, share it with someone who might need a little light today, right? And until next time, Keep questioning, keep exploring, and go way beyond the illusion to discover your true self. Take care, everyone, and bye for now.